Hey guys, Seventh Moose here. How we all doing today? I am, of course, fantastic as always, other than a sore throat. I apologize. There's like 4 inches of pollen outside of my house right now, so I'm going to be clearing up my throat a lot. I don't like to edit my videos much. I like to make it look like I know what I'm talking about and just ranting on the screen. But you may see some jump cuts, just me editing out me clearing my throat because nobody needs to listen to all day long. Anyway, what are we talking about today? I want to talk about racism, terrorism, and why I think that BLM is, in fact, a racist terrorist organization. So, I know that's going to make a lot of people very angry at me in the comments, and that's going to feed the algorithm by commenting. So, cheers. So, as I like to, I want to start with some framing here. And the framing is going to be the definition of racism and terrorism, just so that we're on the same page, at least from my perspective. Racism is defined as the belief that different races possess distinct characteristics, abilities, or qualities, especially so as to distinguish them as inferior or superior to one another. Now, I understand that a lot of people are going to say, well, what about systemic power? That's a key component of racism. I completely and utterly disagree with you. You're wrong. That is nothing to do with racism. You have invented something new and you need to make a new word, such as systemic racism, even. Much as I hate when people say that, that's a new definition, and you can add that to the lexicon. If I don't fight back against you using the word racism in that way, it will change, and I think we're going to be worse off for it. So now we're going to get into terrorist. Unlawfully using violence and intimidation, especially against civilians in pursuit of political aims. Now, I know a lot of my Republican and right wing viewers are going to be like, oh, yeah, that definitely sounds like BLM. And a lot of the people on the left are going to be like, well, that was just a few fringe people. Here's kind of the issue that I see. I'm going to go from the left wing angle here. The Boogaloo Boys have been charged, some of them have been charged with committing acts of violence, specifically to drum up a civil war, to start a war, because that's what they seem to want. And I was reading through some of the texts that were used in their indictments, I guess. They're them being charged with committing acts of violence. And the way that they're talking, it's like they're getting supported by people on the ground, that they're well liked, that people are like, yeah, go do the thing with the violence. And then we've all seen videos of cars being burnt, stores being looted. And I understand that that's a small minority. But from the top of this, don't hear Patrice Khan coming out and condemning these actions and saying, for fuck's sakes, stop doing this. You're hurting my movement. You hear silence. You hear crickets while she's decorating her new house. So the people in the middle here that are on the logical side, that are more chill and like, I just want Black lives to matter. I think that that's what's important, and violence isn't the answer. People are getting pushed out because the people at the bottom level that are committing the violence, they're not supporting that version of the movement. And the people on the top aren't either, because by not condemning the violence, you're passively approving of it. So the people that don't support this violence are not really part of BLM. They're an outgroup of BLM, a subgroup of it, as opposed to the core part, in my opinion. And just like after 9/11, especially, Americans really started hating terrorists. And since, I guess, 1964, Americans really started hating racists as a whole. That's when the corner was turned. When you have a bunch of racist terrorists committing acts of violence with racist ideologies, such as white cops are incapable of not using their systemic privilege to oppress black people, and therefore must be absolutely destroyed and abolished. There's no fixing white people. White people are all racists because they have systemic power and they can't fix it. People aren't going to like you. No wonder why especially after the George Floyd riots. Support for BLM dropped drastically. To be fair, though, I do want to say there are some disparity in police interaction and shooting statistics. And I kind of want to read over this a little bit. Let's get a little dry. I apologize. But African Americans are shot at roughly half the rate as white people are. And what's interesting about that is African Americans represent somewhere between 12 and 14%. I did my best to just aggregate as many statistics as I could. So I'm not going to link anything. It's just what I was able to find. And I have some notes. But roughly, it seems like it's right around half the rate. At the same token, African Americans are engaging with police officers at a rate of 3 times more. So, from the right wing perspective, this is like, wow, African Americans aren't being shot that much by comparison because they have 3 times more encounters than white people, and they're getting shot at half the rate. And on the other side of this argument, you have, why are African Americans engaging with police at a 3 times higher rate while being 13%, give or take, of the population? There's a problem here. And you can look at it as a racism issue, or you can look at it probably more realistically, because as I started deep diving into the locations of where these statistics are spiking, it seems much more related to income level. So you have poor people, don't have a lot of things, tend to commit crimes to attempt to get those things. And as such, police are going to interact with those who commit crimes more often. Now, the real problem here is, and this is really what it comes down to, and this is where I think there are some legitimate points. There's definitely a massive disproportionality, maybe that's a word, in income levels with the African American community. And I do think that that's a holdover from slavery and then all the BS laws that we had up until in 1964, and even redlining and some stuff, I will say, even as recently as maybe the 80s. But after 2 generations, that should pull out. And we can do certain things to try to fix this problem instead of just waiting it out generations without actually being racist, instead of giving African Americans specifically grants or a leg up. You target the areas, because in the same token, you see the same spike of violence with police interactions and crime across, just about across the board. It's about perfectly even, about as perfectly even as you can expect a statistic to be, of white and black that live in the same area. They have about the same interactions and crime rates. So if you were to target Harlem, or I don't know, poorer income areas with a high population density where crime seems to be a lot more popular, instead of saying only X race gets this specific grant, you offer it to everybody in the area. The more people you can get lifted out of that poverty level and into a more stable situation, the less people that live there and the less desperate people become. Basically fixing, in my opinion, everything. People become less violent. Crimes of passion become more popular than crimes of opportunity. In other words, my wife cheated on me, so I beat the crap out of the boyfriend that she had, as opposed to, I couldn't afford to feed my wife, so I stole a car. Anyway, that's just like my opinion, man. Guys, let me know what you think down in the comments. Be good to yourselves. More importantly, be good to each other, and end the video.